We've got good tourist accommodation, we just need more of it, and this is going to have a large impact.
This abandoned puppy today became the latest of around 2,000 dogs who are euthanased every year by injection at Newcastle's RSPCA. The centre is the second busiest in the state and conditions are described as the worst. Built in 1955, the shelter is overcrowded. Dogs spend all day in concrete kennels. Most other facilities have outside kennels, but this one doesn't even have a leash-free exercise area. Up to 100 cats are brought in every day. There are only 30 cages.
It's a very old and deteriorated facility. I mean, we have full recognition of that.
7 years ago, the RSPCA started discussions with Council to find land for a new shelter. Several sites were investigated, the latest Fletcher Park at Maryland. The RSPCA has been asked to pay for geographical studies, but the charity says it hasn't even been assured of the land yet, accusing Council of stalling.
Well, certainly, I mean, 7 years is a long time to be in discussion about this matter, with no commitment still as to where we can go.
What's frustrating is that during the years of delay, the animals here are still suffering. A planned new shelter would have double the amount of dog kennels in far more humane conditions and a cattery, meaning the RSPCA can hold on to the animals longer in the hope of finding them a new home. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
John and Ron Pine, named synonymous with super sedan racing in Australia, aren't racing at their home track this season. They refuse to, along with most members of the Newcastle Sedan Club.
The King Street Hotel is the latest in a long line of accommodation plans for the city, only this one's had a smooth run through Council. The development application for the 7-storey hotel was approved by Council in just 3 months.
It's a credit to the councillors that they're working so well and so objectively. We're of a one mind about many, many things, particularly about tourism, and that was reflected in the decision.
The Lord Mayor is confident the rapid approval process for the hotel can be repeated.
We've put a benchmark in place and we've put the bar up fairly high, and we're going to try and maintain that.
The hotel, to be built adjacent to the renamed Newcastle Workers Club, boasts 192 rooms and a gymnasium. Up to 400 new hotel rooms are now in the pipeline across the city, with 100 rooms at the approved Ibis Hotel at Hunter Street West and another 100 for the controversial Honeysuckle Hotel. The future of the Waterfront Hotel is now in the hands of the state government. Its anticipated final approval will be given before Christmas. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
So we stopped the blood from flowing and tried to help her, but there's nothing you could do.
Roadworks can be a holiday maker's worst nightmare. Sitting in traffic is a terrible way to start a trip. But Project NewSID is an on-site geological truck-based testing unit that will help ensure road building techniques used to upgrade the Pacific Highway are best suited to its foundations, making new work last longer.
We have lots of applications where we're building on very soft soils, and we need to determine the properties accurately so that they can build the roads as quickly and cheaply as possible.
The joint venture between Sydney and Newcastle universities has been funded by $500,000 in grants, with 80% of that money being spent on the equipment that will also test underground water tables for contaminants. It's hoped the truck will lead to more accurate results delivered where they're needed.
Here we can test the ground as it actually is. We don't have to worry about it getting bent out of shape or its properties changing.
David McElwain, NBN News.
Flying Finn Tommy Mäkinen has won the World Rally Championship for the last 4 years, and while he's still in with a chance in 2000, he finds himself playing catch-up. Compatriot Marcus Gronholm leads the title race by 5 points from Richard Burns, with the Ford duo of Carlos Sainz and Colin McRae a further point adrift. A win is worth 10. Rally Australia is the second last round of the title race, and all teams have spent the past week preparing for battle. Among them, Australian challengers like Michael Guest and David Green, although their test session was cut short yesterday by a bingle on the Langford stage.
I think it's just lack of experience for me in the car and not understanding the limitations of it, and we're just pushing a bit hard on one, and this is the result, but better to do it here than in the rallies.
A few beers for the mechanics, and many hours later, the Hyundai was back in working order. Rally Australia gets underway tonight. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
Yesterday evening's criterium stage of the event went to Australian cyclist Ben Brooks, who was in the leading pack of the 30-kilometre race. He led the breakaway group and just edged over the line to claim his first section victory. And in stage 10 today, it was a 104-kilometre stretch from Wollongong to Nowra, and for once Poland was not in the leading pack. Brooks led the way again, making the charge over Jamberoo Pass, with Welsh rider Julian Wynne not far behind. A mid-pack tumble slowed the field, taking its toll on a few riders. Canberra's Rory Sutherland unable to resaddle up with a suspected fractured elbow. Another breakaway trio after the hill, Brooks, Wynne and German rider Heiko Zorn taking up the pace. But it was Australian Glenn Chadwick who had the energy for the second steep hill. He took the front and established a solid lead, crossing the line in first. He's now the highest-ranked Australian rider in fourth. Welshman Julian Wynne came in fourth place today but has improved his overall ranking to second, only 2 seconds behind Poland's Gregors Vaz. Racers will complete another criterium tonight in Nowra. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Newcastle United coach Lee Sterry has never lost a game to rival Graham Arnold, and the Spirit mentor was out to break the duck. Scoring has been a problem for Newcastle this season, and Spirit keeper Paul Henderson wasn't making it any easier. Northern, meanwhile, come off scoring 4 in one game, but Bob Catlin ended that run. Fresh from a face wound suffered last weekend, he wasn't backing away from anything. Strikers simply couldn't get anything past these two glovemen. Catlin had a touch for all occasions as it stayed scoreless. But former Newcastle boy Scott Thomas had no one to blame on an open goal mouth. After half-time, the shots kept coming and so did the saves as the goalkeeper's personal duel continued. There was no doubting both earned their money in this match. 0-0, and with the Spirit now behind him, Lee Sterry hopes club boss Con Constantine keeps faith as well, with some reports indicating his position at the club is under threat.
While money's always rare, the coins which drew these collectors to City Hall this afternoon were rarer again. The major draw cards were two 1930 pennies, struck just to test moulds during the Great Depression when there was no need to be making money. Today, however, they made a mozza. The two chimed in at $19,500 and $15,500 respectively, and they might just prove wise investments. The previous owner bought the first for £125 in 1965. Meanwhile, many tried, but no one succeeded in catching the $10,000 fish in Lake Macquarie Combined Fishing Club's inaugural competition. But the 480 anglers did something far better, raising around $11,000 for the Coast Guard and the Westpac helicopter. The rescue service even staged a mock emergency before the crowd to show its appreciation. As for the fish, well, he's no longer worth $10,000, but organisers have introduced a new bounty for his safe return.
It's worth $100 donated by a few of the people. We want him back, yeah. You never know, we might let him go next year again.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
It's not every day you see an 80-pounder cannon being trucked through Newcastle, but today it was returned to Fort Scratchley in near original condition. This is the first of 4 80-pounders found at a city scrap metal yard and repaired by apprentices at the Hunter Valley Training Company.
We're having the 80-pounder gun restored to its original position in the fort, together with a full replica of the gun carriage that it sat on when it was first put there in 1882.
The 5-ton cannon was gingerly lifted from the truck along with the faithfully constructed gun carriage that had to be lowered down a narrow access hatch and into the underground casemate where the cannon will eventually be fired. The 80-pounders were Newcastle's first line of defence.
They were here to prevent the Russians taking our coal deposits and interfering with the rural industry in the valley. There was a great fear in that latter part of the 19th century that there was going to be a Russian invasion. It never come off, of course, but that was the reason why the fort was built and the guns were put in place.
Meantime, the Army Reserve is preparing for a large-scale recruiting drive in Newcastle. They'll stage a major open day at the Newcastle Paceway at Broadmeadow on the 25th of the month. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This now barely recognisable Ford Fairmont was travelling south on City Road, up the hill when police believe the driver lost control on the wet surface, ploughing into oncoming traffic. The car first slammed into the side of this northbound Toyota, pushing it off the road. The driver of the Fairmont, unable to regain control of his vehicle, was powerless to stop it spinning backwards into a second car, demolishing it and trapping the 39-year-old woman driver inside. Emergency crews were faced with the difficult task of undertaking a rescue amid banking traffic and wet and slippery conditions. They soon managed to free the trapped driver. She was rushed to the John Hunter Hospital where she's now in a stable condition. Police have revealed the driver of the Fairmont was unlicensed, uninsured and the car was unregistered. Adam Harper, NBN News.
As if the Fern Bay course wasn't tough enough already, today's rain made things a real test for these trainees. For West Australian Richie Smith, today's conditions were completely foreign.
It blows like this, but it's just not this wet, as you can see.
But he knows all about this course, finishing 4th here last year. Richie has remodelled his game in the last 12 months to make sure he goes all the way this time around.
This has really been my goal for the whole year, so I've been building up for this and just want to give it my best shot.
Celebrating his birthday tomorrow, there's no guessing what he'll be wishing for in the 72-hole tournament. In contrast, 21-year-old South African trainee champ Will Booth doesn't know what to expect in his first international.
Yes, no, there's pressure. It's pretty much the first tournament I've competed in overseas outside of South Africa. So I'm going to give it my best and see how it goes in that.
The 4-day, $40,000 tournament starts Thursday.
It's the wind and it's the direction of the swell that's making up the ferry and the lakes and the harbour.
Amid concerns over drugs being smuggled into the state's prisons, police and the Corrective Service Department targeted Cessnock Jail over the weekend.
I think the issue is that a lot of people are in jail over drug-related offences and property theft as a result of that. Therefore, if there is continued use in the jail, well, we're certainly not combating the overall problem.
75 people visiting inmates were searched, 6 arrested on trafficking and possession charges, one of them a 17-year-old girl.
I think it's important for us to send a very clear message to people visiting those centres that there will be continued operations and we'll be looking for that type of material.
Police served 15 court summons and issued infringement notices with penalties totalling $5,500 and seized minor amounts of amphetamines, heroin and cannabis.
We also seized, as part of the operation in and around the area, firearm and other offensive implements.
It was the 5th such jail operation in the last 6 months. Most of those charged will face Cessnock Court on the 11th of next month. Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
They came from all walks of life, blue-collar workers, union and religious leaders, all with the common goal to protect and enhance manufacturing in Australia. Under the slogan, "Make it here or jobs disappear," one by one they spoke of a country without a clear manufacturing strategy.
Our manufacturing sector is between 5 and 7% smaller than comparative OECD countries. We are losing our economic independence.
Key speaker Dick Smith claims Australia is losing its economic independence to international big business.
There's no reason why we can't be manufacturing and selling, especially to America, Japan, Germany, places like that. With our dollar at 52 cents, we should be just flat out.
Mr Smith has called for a national summit involving unions, government and business on the issue, while a Hunter task force will take the campaign nationwide. Meanwhile, workers at Newcastle's Steel, Tank and Pipe are continuing their picket outside the Carrington business, angry they could lose more than $300,000 in entitlements. They were joined by manufacturing workers' union bosses who say a bailout similar to that of National Textiles workers at Rutherford just won't do.
What's required now is employers in this country should be made to pay accrued entitlements of employees, annual leave, long service leave, etc., on a weekly basis into trust funds. So this sort of rort can't be pulled anymore.
The Transport Workers Union is also supporting the Carrington picket. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
There are 4 nations left vying for the World Cup title. England will play New Zealand in Bolton on Sunday, and Australia will play Wales at Huddersfield at 4:45 a.m. Monday morning our time. Australia, of course, are unbackable odds to be in the final, and I think New Zealand will be too good for England. The ratings so far in the World Cup in England have been quite amazing. In one instance, Australia played Samoa in the quarterfinals. 3.2 million viewed were tuned into the BBC, while only 2 hours earlier on a live telecast of the Wallabies v Scotland at Murrayfield only attracted 2.2 million viewers. Now that's great news for rugby league in the UK. The Australian players and officials have agreed to fine themselves for their involvement in the hair dyeing, moustache and beard growing activities in the World Cup. With the money that they've raised so far from their fines, they'll donate close to $6,000 to Teen Challenge charity. Mark Geyer has decided to hang up his boots this week. He's had a great rugby league career. He's played 3 tests for Australia, 3 State of Origins, and has won a grand final in 1991. He also has played 190 first grade games, and whenever you played against him, he left a path of destruction. He's probably one of the most physically intense people that I've ever played against. Now, what do you say about the Save the South Sydney rally? Last Sunday, it was an overwhelming show of support. A lot of people from the Hunter Valley and New South Wales country went down, and while it's still a waiting game, you can't help but admire the way that these guys have fought on, and they've attracted so many rugby league supporters from all around the world, and I tell you, I'm certainly one of them. Anyway, that's it from me. Back to you, Rabs.
Pre-season training continued for the Knights this afternoon, but it'll all come to a temporary halt for Glenn Grief on Tuesday. The prop forward will have an arthroscope on his injured right shoulder.
I've been carrying it now for roughly 8 years, and usually in the off-season it settles down by itself, but unfortunately this year it's just gotten a little bit worse.
Cartilage torn last season seems to be causing the problem. Grief's wait for an improvement, ruling out a reconstruction.
If I can just get this shoulder fixed and be out probably 6 to 8 weeks, I'll be happy so I can start the season fresh.
Meanwhile, fellow forwards Clinton O'Brien and Matt Parsons should soon return to full training. To soccer, and a decision on whether Daniel McBreen will line up for Newcastle United has been put off until game day. Should the striker succumb to a hamstring injury, Peter Junknowitz might just find himself playing up front. 110 trainee professionals teed off for the first day of the Futures Championship, the biggest tournament of its kind in Australia.
It's a culminating event for the trainees for the year, and for some of them it's their last development event before they go off to the major tour starting next week with the Australian Open.
But today all eyes were focused on the job at hand. Steve Krause made the early break, while last year's runner-up Ian Edwards and Canberra's Mark Brooker are among 4 players 2 shots back. International players also found the conditions tough. American Randall McCracken carded an even round. British-based Dane Tor Anderson saved par on the third but went on to finish 3 over, while South African Will Booth is in danger of missing the cut. For the Aussies, however, there's more than prize money and prestige on the line.
The leading Australian wins an opportunity to play in the US Assistance Championship, which is a very well-credentialed tournament in the United States, and many of those players head on to the major US circuit after they've gone well in that event.
The field will be reduced by 50 at the conclusion of tomorrow's round. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.